Radio. Homegrown Radio. Real 92.3.
All right, we back at it. Homegrown Radio. Chuck Dizzle, DJ Head.
West Coast.
Yes, you are ready for it. And that's why he's the homegrown homie.
Hey.
Emmy Award.
That's never happened before.
Right, it's the first time.
I knew it was going to happen.
We got an Emmy award-winning sports reporter in the house with us right now. I mean, I'm just excited to talk about this man's journey and everything he has going on.
You've seen him before.
Say it again?
I said
of course you have, man. Kevin Cuenca's in the building with us right now, man.
Appreciate y'all for having me.
Did I fuck your name up?
You did it perfect.
Okay, cool. I always
You made
worry
my
about
grandpa
that.
very proud right
Thank
now.
you, man.
Absolutely.
So tell people well, we'll get into the journey, but for the
Yeah.
folks that don't know who Kevin Cuenca is, let us know where you're from, what you're about, and just kind of the spiel as to who you are, my man.
Yeah, I think for me, like the way that most people come across my page is from these car music videos that I started doing last May. But I've been a sports reporter for 15 years, and that was really my journey from Northern California to going out to Texas. I went to high school in Napa.
Okay.
And then lived in San Jose for 6 years, and that was my first job out of college. And so we covered high school sports throughout the entire Bay Area. So I was able to build relationships with people from all over the Bay. And now, like, if you said what's home, to me it's the Bay. It's Napa specifically is where my mom and my brother both live. And then went out to Texas for almost 5 years, doing sports reporting out there for 2 different TV stations, and then was able to make my way to LA and work for CBS and KCAL for about 3 years.
Nice.
Almost 3.5 years actually. And that's when I started doing these car music videos that have slowly but surely built a following and also relationships with guys like you. And,
Hell yeah.
it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
I think that's the thing that people just don't expect it. When they see the video, they're like, yo, who is this cat that knows G Perico?
Right.
And, all these homegrown homies, but then also cats from the Bay and just artists that you may not think that you're into. But I know that you loyal to the soil. You know about these cats. You're familiar with them, and you embrace hip hop to the point where that's the soundtrack to your lifestyle as well, man. But speak about that, like that being the thing that people are turning to. What was that moment, or did you realize like, okay, damn, this is kind of turning up?
So the first moment where I realized that there was real potential in it, because I had done some of these car music videos even back when I was in Texas, but they were always very kind of just spontaneous, laid back. I'd be dressed in sweats or a t-shirt or whatever. And there was one day where I was driving. I don't even honestly remember where I was driving from, but that day I had a dress shirt and a tie on, and I did a Daz and Curate song. And when Daz reposted it,
Was it Who Ride?
it was Ride With Us.
Ride With Us. Yeah.
And so when I did that song, Daz and Curate and Daz on it. When I did it, and then Daz reposted it, so I got a little bit of some new followers also. But when I watched it back, for me, it was a moment of like, because I'm my own worst critic. So when I watched it back, it looked different and more funny than the other ones because I looked like a square too.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so I was like, there's something to this. I need to follow this formula. And also, I think the first video that really showed me to continue to do like local dudes, even like kind of underground at that point, was like Savi Third.
Yeah.
Because when I did Savi Third, I think he was at like 12,000 Instagram followers at that time. It was early on. It was before the deal with Cash Money West and everything. And but I saw how loyal his fan base was and how hard Long Beach was going, not only for him, but for the video that I did, and they were like taken aback by it. And I think seeing that and their reaction was like, all right, let's keep it hyper local. Let's build it from here. And like, let's show some local dudes like G Perico and other guys who were like, we knew about them, us. Yeah. But like, you're not hearing about them. You're not hearing them on, mainstream radio every day either. So I think that was cool because I knew that it would impact them more. It would help them more. And also, it would create some real relationships as opposed to me just being in my car and doing Drake songs every week. So I think that's what has been cool, is like building those real relationships from this area and then expanding it to
What made you want to fuck with hip hop though? Is it something that come natural to you, or like is it something that you fuck with on a regular basis?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. So like we moved down as a family. My parents divorced when I was in 8th grade, and we moved from Washington State to the Bay, to Napa. And so at that time, especially the next year, like I remember my first CDs that I bought that year, I bought 3 CDs, and it was Fugees, The Score. It was Too Short, Getting It, and it was Mac Mall, Untouchable. That was the 3 CDs that I bought. And I've since like gone back and forth with Mac Mall about that as well. And he always shows love, and Too Short has done the same. And so that was 8th going into 9th grade. And then once I got to high school, my brother was a senior, I was a freshman, and we both played basketball. And at that time, it went Napa, American Canyon, and Vallejo. That was like geographically, that's how it went. So a lot of the kids from American Canyon were bussed into Napa. And so they would bring Doobie, and they would bring Mac Dre and Be Legit and E40 and these songs with them to like the basketball team, right? So now these guys are like on the warm-up CDs and stuff. I remember one of the songs that I was able to do once I went back to cover the Super Bowl in Atlanta was Goody Mob. I remember that specifically was the first track on my brother's warm-up CD when they would come out and circle the court as a basketball team. It was, who's that peeking in my window? So like we have these, I had these moments, and I, just very fortunate that at that time there was so much great music coming out of the Bay Area. Crest Side, Hillside, like you had these real strong, Sick With It, Romp Records, like you had so much great timeless music coming out at that point, and I just gravitated to it. So even when I went to college in upstate New York at Syracuse, like my friends used to make fun of me because I was always playing E40 and Too Short and all these Bay Area dudes, and they're like, "What the hell is this
idea
shit?
who it
Like,
is,
why are they saying that? What's hella mean?" They had no idea about this
Putting them
stuff.
on game with the hell and the artists and all that. That's crazy.
So yeah, it's always been the music that I've listened to.
That's what's
Now,
up.
it's funny he just said it like just in passing. He's like, "Yeah, when I covered the Super Bowl, like it was nothing." You know what I'm saying? Like, but that's major. So talk about your journey as a sports journalist, man, and how that passion grew into what you're doing now, but just the early days of that.
Yeah. So like, I was fortunate in Washington State. My mom got me into theater, and so at that point I actually like used to sing a lot. Like
You used to sing?
yeah, for real sing.
Like for real
vocals.
sing?
Yeah, like-
Were you an alto?
No, I was a high tenor.
You was a tenor?
Yeah, so I would do musical theater. Every time the school would have an assembly, I'd be singing solos.
Run,
And like
It is like opera.
I actually did one opera. I was a kid playing in an opera.
That's crazy.
But not like most of the stuff was just like musical theater, but not on the opera side.
So like Broadway musical
Yeah,
type
that
shit?
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
So that's
damn.
where like the being comfortable in front of the camera and on stage stuff started. And once my passion for sports grew, I knew I wasn't going to go pro playing basketball, but I knew that I could stay around sports through broadcasting. And so once after college, I came back to the Bay and worked for 6 years, and then was able to get out to Texas and really own my skills and find my voice and learn how to really put together stories and also anchor. That was my first time really anchoring on like a live newscast. And so coming out to LA was a huge thrill. Like, I came out here and I worked for 3.5 years at freelance. And so there's tons of ups and downs. Like I'd been demoted and been on food stamps and unemployment and all that stuff. But really ultimately what got me through all those moments was just the passion for it and being able to like, cover the Dodgers and the Lakers. And I was able to cover 2 NBA finals in Texas. Out here I was able to cover 2 World Series and a Super Bowl. So like those moments are, even though the industry is changing a ton and has changed a ton, and the longevity and the a lot of the parts of the business side of it aren't the same as when probably I was in college. I think there's just, from that aspect, not as great of a business anymore. But those moments, those experiences that I was able to have are, things I'll tell my kids and my grandkids about.
Absolutely.
So like that stuff's priceless, and I'm so thankful and grateful that I was able to have that journey.
Now, did you have a passion for sports, or did you have a passion for journalism? Did you have a passion for broadcasting, or was it a passion for just being in front of the camera? Like what when you're talking to the guy that, the 13, 14-year-old Kevin that's buying the Score, right?
Yeah.
What in your mind, what did you want to do? What did you see yourself doing at that age?
I think I had to decide if I wanted to do like play-by-play or reporting. Ultimately, it was just a passion for sports and being around sports.
Gotcha.
I think to be able to say, hey, I'm going to work today, and you're going to a Laker game and you're sitting in the second row and you're just hanging out. And
That's
you
crazy.
Interview Kobe and then you do a live shot and that's it. Like, you guys are passionate about what you do. And it's the same thing where it's like, yeah, it's work, but there's a lot worse things you could be doing. And I enjoyed the hell out of it, and it was an amazing ride, man, for almost 15 years. So I had a blast.
Now, I was watching a video that you did about you mentioned that you got demoted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was this video you correct me about if I'm wrong, but you were talking about your journey to get this position, and then you didn't get it, and then but you specifically sent something to your boss saying, you know what, if any opportunities come up, let me know. Let me know what I have to do. Where did that come from? It from your personality sense to say, let me not point the finger at somebody else or the industry or the politics or the things that we all see. And I'm sure we're all guilty of saying it too. We have all been through ups and downs in this business. But for you, what was that switch to say, you know what, I got to work on myself and how can I make myself better when the position becomes open?
Yeah, for me, it's all about just controlling what you can control. And you hear that all the time from sports and athletes in their realm. And it's a cliche to a certain extent. But for me, it's really true. Like, I've never tried to worry about anything that I do from an artistic standpoint or a journalistic standpoint, because everything that I do and that you guys do, it's all subjective. The camera guys, everything that we're doing here right now, it's art and it's subjective. Right. Some person over here could be like, oh, that's amazing, we love it. Another person over here could be like, hate it, don't want to see it anymore.
Fuck that.
And so I think knowing that about this business and entertainment industry and all that, and it's like, let me control what I can control and not worry about anything outside of that, because you're always going to deal with, a boss having a relationship with somebody else, or, the politics of it, money, salaries, etc. Like, just people having their favorites. Like, that's part of every workspace. You know what I mean? So it's like, let me focus on me, let the rest of this shit fall where it's going to fall, and I'll be all right. Because at the end of the day, like, we're all blessed to be doing what we love, even if the specifics of it aren't as like exactly how we want them.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but just kind of expanding on that, like, was that something that was in your upbringing? Was that something that you learned from your parents, or did you see somebody else's opportunity and it just clicked for you like, oh, okay, that's that moment where I realized that was something that you were taught, or just in you?
I want to say that I'm really fortunate to have a mom that, showed me what hard work looks like and what perseverance looks like, what dedication looks like. I had an older brother who was, a role model as well, and was really my father figure. So I definitely want to, give props to them. I think a lot of the stuff too just came from learning from my own failures and setbacks along the journey of almost 15 years, because, I got out to Texas, and this is where, like, Nipsey Hussle's marathon comes to play, because in 2010, when I was in College Station, Texas, I got passed up for 2 promotions after, like, busting my ass. I was driving an hour and a half and back to work every day and filling in for people, and then got passed up for 2 openings. And I was really pissed off, and I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to get out of that station, and I was making like no money. And I remember hearing Love, his song, and just hearing him talk about this marathon approach helped me to realize, like, all right, if you have this focus and this laser focus, and I can get really determined on certain things, and that's great, but you need to change the mindset that I was attacking things with, and just know that, like, there's going to be things you can't control, and you've got to look at it like a marathon. There's going to be ups and downs, and that just because this person got this job that you should have been promoted for doesn't mean you're not going to beat them at the end of the race. And I think that's what, like the 2 guys that were hired ahead of me at that first position, like, they're not even in the business anymore.
Wow.
And I'll get to, later on why I'm not, but, like, I was able to then move on to San Antonio and then move on to LA. So, like, I was able to climb that mountain, and they just stayed where they were, even though at that point they were ahead of me.
Gotcha. I could definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys have both been grinding. It was, I'm going to blank on the lyric, but I just remember pulling over, and it was like I was out of a Chick-fil-A. It was late at night, and I opened the car door, and Nipsey was blaring, and I was literally, like, screaming the lyrics, and it was far from where I'm going, but I'm far from where I'm going, but I'm far from home. I'm gonna somehow I know I'm on the right path, kind of thing, and, like, my mom always said I was going to be special. I don't remember the exact lyric, but I'd have to look it up.
It struck a chord, man. It resonated with you.
But yeah, and that's why, like, just his whole marathon mindset really helped me navigate. And thankfully I was able to thank him for that a few weeks ago. And you obviously played a huge instrumental part in that. And just being able to thank him face to face meant so much to me, because those words, his music, helped me get through not only that moment, but then 3.5 years at the next station in Texas, and then another 3 of ups and downs here in LA. So it was just riding that ride.
When you talk about Nip, like, I mean, obviously we love Nipsey and stuff like that, and then you actually made it a point to like go down there, show your love to Nipsey when he was doing his event and whatnot. Do you feel like we gave Nipsey his props while he was here, or you feel like it was still more meat on that bone as far as like who he was as a fan, as a culture?
You know what? I really do feel like he saw the impact that he had, because having gone there for the grand opening, the collaboration with Planes, and seeing just the outpouring of support, like you guys showing up, the taco trucks out there with Taco Bell and Mr. Fries, man, and the place being packed and the line being around the corner, like that's not happening for every artist. And especially like coming right back to his area, his hometown, and being able to do that. Like, yeah, I think we were able to show him that. I think that's one of the things that I guess it's one of the silver linings of his passing, even though that's really hard to say. It's that he saw how much love was around him. People were buying his mixtapes for $100, and then his mixtapes for $1,000. And Jay-Z was, right there with them. And like, he had these big artists showing him love. And he also, in a lot of ways, changed the blueprint and the map of success, and how I know from a consumer standpoint, how I view successful artists. Like, yeah, do you have your masters? Do you own any of this stuff? Like, we started to think about this stuff. I know artists had to. So yeah, absolutely. I think we showed him love. You can always, show more love, but being able to thank him in person meant a lot to me. And I'm out here on a mission, and I'm all alone, far from where I'm going, but I'm far from home. Somehow, I know I'm something on top. So
He's like, I'm gonna get it.
I had it a second ago before you asked the question, man. Damn it.
You were speaking about that, man, and just talking about Nip. Obviously, the impact of the culture, but for you personally, how did you take his death immediately when you heard the news?
Man, it sucked, dude. I was at the Compton AV music video shoot, and so we were actually between locations, and we had just finished up this like really silly mock news reporter live segment on the corner, and AV walks up, and it's just like really silly, right? And I'm in like a suit, like I'm doing a real newscast. And so he's like, all right, let's go to the next spot. And so I'm walking to my car, and I had a missed call, and then I got another call. And it was my friend Jasmine, and she said, have you heard what happened to Nipsey? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? She's like, he got shot 6 times. Like, I don't know if he's going to be okay. And so at that point, I'm just sitting in my car getting ready to go to the next location. I'm just like looking at my Twitter feed and figuring out, all right, is this like something that he can pull through from, or is this like, this is it, And so we still didn't know. I went to the next location. We were all standing out front. Everybody was talking about it. His buddy Curtis and the artist Trilliano was there. We were like discussing it. And at that point, still nobody knew that he had passed. And I was literally just sitting there refreshing my Twitter feed every 2 seconds. And then I saw that he passed. And I remember I just like left the group. I walked away. And I almost left the whole shoot. And I sit there for like maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. And but I didn't want to just walk out on AV. And I saw the pain in his eyes, but also understanding how music video shoots go and how much money and time and effort and logistics and planning go into that. Like, I knew that he needed to finish that right then and there. Yeah. And so we ended up having a really cool moment together. Like, coincidentally, I was wearing a Magic Johnson 32 jersey, the one that he's pictured in courtside all the time.
Fight somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just in general, yeah.
And so, I went and AV and I knocked out the last 2 scenes, and I'm, like, at first I didn't even really know what AV needed from me, and it ended up being like a full performance, which you guys will see with this music video for Let 'Em Hate with OT Genesis. So we had a blast doing it, but it was like one of those moments where it was like, all right, let's just show love and like, this is the circumstance. This is where we are. How can we show love? Yeah. And like, let's, because at the end of the day, he'd want you to, gas the V12 to the pipe and smoke. Like he'd want you to go hard on it.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, and we tried to make the best of it.
Do you think that it's what, like, I felt like it was worse because of how he died.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I also felt like most people looked at that because, you know, the videos got to circulate and all of that shit. But I think that most people who, like, got a chance to meet Nip and whatnot, all mutually agree, like, he didn't deserve that.
Hell no.
You know what I'm saying?
Man,
I wouldn't wish that on nobody, but he specifically didn't deserve that.
In front of his own store. Right. And we can, you know, rehash this, but essentially, like, I'll never watch the video, but just reading the description of what happened, and really it seems like, you know, bless his heart, I wish, and I know he wishes more than anybody that J-Rock would have been there. And I was able to, you know, give him my condolences in person that night. He was at the little vigil out front of Marathon store that night, and just got to hug him and say, hey, man, you know, like, obviously this isn't on you.
This
and just
ain't on you, yeah.
Keep your head up. But you know that just how he's wired, big dude, he's been with him every step of the way. Yeah. Like, you know, he wishes more than anybody that he was there. And really, honestly, it seems like if just one person was there that was strapped or knew how to handle that situation, it would have been a whole different thing, because he wouldn't have been able to come back a couple times. And that's what's really, you know, unfortunate about the situation. And I'm sure, you know, Black Sam, his brother, who I got to meet, who could not have been nicer when I went to the Marathon store. I want to give him a huge shout out, because I did this real quick segment when I was on CBS, and I basically said, as philosopher Nipsey Hussle would say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think me using philosopher instead of rapper on the news, from like a viewer standpoint, like, I think sometimes certainly our demographic would like put a rapper in a box, whereas you say philosopher and they're like, well, who's that? What's his name? And so I think, and then from Nipsey's standpoint, they reached out right away afterwards and like, you know, Letty, his road manager's wife, fiance, whatever, like she reached out right away, reposted it, and then the Marathon store, my buddy Juan from over there hit me up. He's like, hey, you know, Nipsey wants us to have you come in, like, whenever it's good for you, like, we just want to be able to show you some love and you know, have you come by. So I went by there, and Black Sam was there, and he took me next door to the barbershop that wasn't even open yet. It was just like giving me a tour of the whole spot, and it was just really great energy. And you know, obviously our hearts and prayers go out to his brother Black Sam and the whole family, because it's not just like, absolutely, Nipsey was like a huge driving force in what I've been able to do in terms of my sports broadcasting stuff, but his ascension is also, you know, thanks to a lot, like his circle, the people around him, DJ VIP and Jorge and Black Sam and all these dudes, J-Rock, his bodyguard, like all these dudes were really there with him, and Jay Stone, all these artists that are like his family, you know, like gave him that confidence, that security, that they kept his well-being, and like just were there for him as he was the voice for that whole area. But as you said, like, it's just such a shame, because he was a man of such great character and heart, and at the end of the day, bullets take that away real quick.
I wanted to ask you too, because you brought up I remember you did that on the philosopher thing when you talked about Nip on the broadcast. What do you think is the biggest divide? And then we'll go transition into like your story. But what do you think is the biggest like division between mainstream broadcasting and the hip hop community?
I think it's people scared, first and foremost. Like, and I mean that from a couple standpoints. I mean that from, you know, if you're a reporter or an anchor and you're playing rap music in your car and you put it out on your social media, how are the news director and the general manager, how are these people going to view it? And then on top of that, you have from the management type perspective too, is like, how does this make us look as a station? Is this too real? Is this too hardcore? Whatever. And so, like, for me, I was always very mindful of, like, if there was a curse word, I was taking it out. You'll never hear the N-word on any of the songs that I do. And that's very much like that's very serious to me. Like, I never wanted it to be the kind of thing where, because I've got, you know, kids that I volunteer with over the Mar Vista Gardens Boys and Girls Club that are following me on my Instagram. Like, I don't want it to be the kind of thing where it was, you know, bringing negative stuff to their eyes. But ultimately, like, there's so much goodness coming out of rap music in this area, and people as they're coming up trying to change their lives and the lives of their families and the people around them. And there's just a lot of great art coming out. And for me, it was like, this is the music that I listen to anyways, and I'm going to shine some light on it. And if that brings something down the pipeline from management, then that's what it is. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it's people scared of being who they are. And, you know, obviously it was easier for me because I don't have a family and kids. Like, I might have looked at it different had I had other people depending on my paycheck too.
2
you know
mortgages,
what I mean?
3 kids.
Like, it could be a different story. Like, if you and on top of that, you know, if like you're a main face of a station, there's more pressure on you. For me, I was freelance sports. Like, I didn't really feel like I needed to be this perfect image type of dude. But I think, you know, it's tough for companies like whether it's Real 92.3 or CBS KCAL 9. It's like they've got to appease certain people and an audience, and they've got to be mindful of certain things that I don't have to be mindful of. And I mean, I can be mindful of them, but at the end of the day, I need to be able to live my life. And fortunately, there's so many different avenues for me to be creative and create content. That TV was an amazing platform for 15 years for me, and I was able to do amazing things and have these awesome experiences like we talked about. But there's so many other ways that I can make a living, and creating content that's more true to who I am as a person anyway. Like, this is who I am. Yeah.
And you keep saying was, so you no longer doing the TV thing.
Yeah, so like it's crazy. I came back from the Super Bowl and I was off for 2 days, and I came to work that Thursday, and that's when they fired me. And so like the last thing I did on air was rap Big Boy's verse from an Outkast song on live TV when I was out in Atlanta, that morning show. So what was really cool was I had probably 15 people, whether it was reporters or anchors at the station, like all the main faces, all like the full-time people coming up to me and either on air or off air saying like, we love what you're doing. This is so cool. Like, you've got this great following going now, and like, just keep doing it. Keep doing your shit. And it gave me maybe a false sense of confidence in terms of like how management would see it. But ultimately, I didn't really feel like I was doing anything wrong by showing love to artists with rap music. But when I came back, our social media guidelines are very tough at our station. Like, literally, if you guys have a Real 92.3 page and I come and like it on Instagram, that's a violation because that's an endorsement of your guys' station or your company, your
that's
branch.
Crazy.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Wow.
So if that's a violation,
You can imagine.
me riding around bumping Jeep Perico is a whole nother violation. Right. So I mean, you gotta understand that the guidelines themselves are set up so that you're literally just going to work, and if you're using social media, it's, hey, I'm here covering this story, and that's it. You know, maybe it's a picture of me and like, you and your kids or something, but it's like, it's got to be literally the most vanilla.
Let me ask you,
happy-go-lucky stuff.
Let me ask you a question, because we talked about this, but I just want to ask you this, because I was thinking about this the other day when I saw you. Do you feel like your love for hip hop and the culture cost you your job?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And ultimately, I was trying to work for myself around the summertime anyways. Like, I felt like that would be a good time for me to continue to ramp up my social media stuff. But yeah, I having had the meeting and being fired and how it went down, and absolutely, I don't think it would have been this case had I been singing Ariana Grande songs.
Facts.
And so, and even with that said, though, like, that's not me saying, man, fuck the station.
Of course
like,
not.
You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like, I was having fun, and again, it's subjective. Like, I can be like, hey, I feel like this is fine, and someone in management can be like, I don't think this is fine.
But
And
did
we got
you
to let
get
you
any
go.
kind of like backlash, or did you get hit up to say, hey, look, don't do that? We saw the Perico video, or we saw the Daz and Corrupt. Yeah, let's keep it away from that. Like, did you get any kind of backlash?
Well, no, because, you know, for me, it was one of those things where it definitely caught me off guard because having so many different people from the station come up and give encouragement.
Show love.
And literally on air be like, hey, can you do that song? Like the last time that that last thing I did at the Super Bowl was literally a morning news anchor who's an awesome person, and she was like, hey, this is our social media star, Kev. You got like a verse for us before you get back on this plane.
So it was encouraged.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, like that doesn't mean management was encouraging it. And so, I think it's one of those things where like it's no hard feelings. At the end of the day, I know that my path is in God's plan for me is bigger than what I was able to do in the confined space of that station. And I just feel like I was able to get out of that journey what I was able to get out of it, and now it's time for me to utilize this following that I've built, these relationships that I've built, the connections I've made, and just really tap into not only who I am, but also like this really devoted following on these social media platforms, and the fact that can be a whole nother way for me to create content now, where in the words of Nip, is like, fuck the middleman. I don't really need a TV station at the end of the day to do a lot of the stuff that I want to do ultimately. But it was great while I did it. I made, have awesome relationships. My guy Andre in here right now, like as a camera guy, there's so many people at that station that showed love while I was there and were great to work with. And that's ultimately what I'm going to take away from it. But yeah, as far as the original question, I think it had a lot to do with just the kind of music and the disconnect. Like, because you got to understand, it could have not even been someone from the station that made the decision. We have a corporate office in New York that literally could have seen this stuff after me doing my Super Bowl thing, and been like, "What the hell is this? Like, why isn't this guy fired yet?" Yeah, and that makes our news director look bad if she doesn't drop the hammer or acts like she knew about it. She's got to be like, yo, I have no idea, but I'm dropping the hammer today. Gotcha. Because at the end of the day, it's just falling in line.
What I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand this, or we can just have this discussion. Like, there's no doubt that hip hop is the most popular music out there, right? It's a driving force. It's the culture. People. Now, if you would have said this in early 90s, late 80s, all right, I get it.
Fuck the police.
Right. If you doing fuck the police, I get it. Or wonder why they call you bitch. Or hit them up. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You doing hit them up against ABC or some shit. You know what I'm saying? I get it. But that'd have been wild. That'd be hard. But hip hop is no doubt the leading force. So I just don't understand where do you think that disconnect is now? Where they still feel, I don't know I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but threatened, or they feel like it's something that's...
He said it's fear, but...
Yeah, I think it's just a generational gap, man. Yeah. Because, literally it could have been some 6-year-old dude in New York that made the decision. I think, like even when I'm home and I put on rap around my mom, like she's very like auditory sensitive. And like she doesn't hear the words, she just hears the beat, and it sounds obnoxious in her ear, and she's like, "Turn that shit off." Right. You know what I mean? And it's like there's other people that feel like that about this kind of music, and I think, ultimately, I think what disheartens me and what frustrates me is that like we have no problem showing up in a couple different scenarios. We have no problem showing up when people kill each other in these areas. And we have no problem showing love to a guy like Nipsey, because they did a pre-Grammy. Now, granted, the Grammys were on CBS, so a little contrived, but we did a pre-Grammy interview with Nipsey Hussle. And shout out to Pat Harvey. She's an amazing woman, killed the interview, and she's an awesome, not only advocate for me, but for her people, and just she's an amazing person. And so they did a great job. But I think what I was doing was Nipsey's here, pre-Grammy nomination. He's already released Victory Lap. He's on the top of the West Coast.
Community leader, pillar, all that. Right?
All that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's easy to get behind a guy like that. Mm-hmm. What about a guy like Rucci? Yeah. Who I'll do my next video on, and who literally from the time he was like 3 years old was around gang members, his whole family. So it's like, we're taking a guy like that. Now, is he any less deserving of that love? No, he just hasn't had the time to mature to a guy like Nipsey in terms of age and life and all that. And he can get to that point, and I'm showing him love before he's got to that point. Facts. And so that is scarier for them than like this polished artist that they can say like, oh, see, we're in the Crenshaw district, we're showing love. Right. It was like, there's a whole lot of other Nipseys coming up and I say that not in the sense of like Nipsey is one that for decades there will be no one else like him.
Facts.
But what I mean is like there's other guys that are aspiring to be like Nipsey, and all I'm saying is like they haven't made it to that level of stardom yet, but I'm showing them some love down here, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, and it shouldn't be scary for me to rap to these guys' music in my car and show them love, especially if I'm not cursing. Right. But at the end of the day, it was considered juvenile, and even the things like me showing the Crenshaw backpack at the Seattle Stadium when I got flown out there with the Rams to cover a game, that was a violation in itself.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not making any money off of that. It's a fundraiser for a football team, but they didn't know that until after they had already fired me, and I emailed the lady like, look, by the way, you know that Crenshaw backpack that you were upset about?
Yeah.
I wasn't making any money off of that. That wasn't me utilizing this platform for my own cash. Like, this was to raise money for kids. But again, that goes back to the disconnect. And then instead of them coming and saying, all right, so what was this backpack about? And like, what are you doing with these different artists? Like, what's the reasoning behind it?
Got you.
There's none of that conversation. It's just, this music is what it is. It looks like you're pimping out your Instagram to these different brands. Like, we can't have it. And so that's their guideline.
Why don't you think that the question is asked?
I guess that was my point. Is
beforehand.
Like, to me, that's where it feels like it was a higher up decision, like maybe someone in corporate back east, where it wasn't about like, all right, let's go find out. It was like, hey, do you know about this? Like, this guy shouldn't be on air anymore. And if at that point it's too late to ask the question.
Got you.
But I'll never know probably about like what was the real root of it, where it came from, where the decision came from, how high up it came from. But ultimately, I just think at the end of the day, I'm meant to be somewhere else, and it just wasn't the right place for me anymore, man.
And you can do it. And you can do it in your own way now. Like, and that's to me, that's the most inspiring part about it. Sometimes we get pushed into different lanes and different avenues, and it may seem crazy at the moment, but it's like, now you have full control of your intellectual property. You can do whatever you want to do in terms of like showcasing brands, showcasing artists, and just showing the love to the people that you actually want to show love to.
What? Oh, good.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you what percentage. So if you had like a fear, and you had if you had a fear and an excitement meter, what percentage would be each one at where you are now?
0 fear, 100 excitement.
There you go.
Because at the end of the day, man, and this isn't going to be the same situation for everybody, but I'm really blessed. It's the same reason I was able to go from Texas to LA without a real job lined up or anything solid. I essentially just put in my 2 weeks out there and was like, look, I got to go. I'm going to pack up this car and drive out to LA. I feel like I can make it happen.
Wow.
And it's because, I say that because I was in a certain circumstance. Like, I didn't have a wife and kids. I have a mom back home that, like, if shit really hit the fan and went all to hell, I could move back in for a couple months and get my feet back under me.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that same scenario.
Yeah.
So I can say it's 0 fear and 100 excitement, but I also want to say that that's not just because I'm some badass running around like I got this all figured out. It's like I'm also from a circumstance that I'm very fortunate. Like, I have a mom who would hold me down if I needed it, and same with my brother. Like, I would be okay.
Let me ask you this. There's 2 more things we can wrap up. Because I got into an argument about one of the homies 2 days ago, right? Do you feel like white privilege is real?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think just the fact that, I'm able to do certain things, like, I'll just say, like, even on a very surface level, like, not without even getting super deep, the fact that these videos have done well is because I look like this.
Right.
Not like this with the beard, but like when I didn't have it and I was just buttoned up and I looked like a square, that video is funnier to look at and hear than if you were to do it with your backwards hat and your West Coast shirt on.
Facts.
Period. Yeah. So, and I'm able to utilize that. Now, it's also about, for me, being mindful of it and being like, all right, I've been, like, we don't control the situation that we're born in, the skin color that we're born in, any of that. So this is my situation. And now me being mindful of that is like, all right, I'm going to have certain things easier for me if I am on the same side of the street as a lady at night. Like, she might not be as scared of me as she would be of you with your backwards hat, period. And so me being mindful of stuff like this I have to think, all right, well, what can I do for those who did not get born into the same situation that I am? And that's why I go to a place like Culver City, which to me is like maybe the last area on the west side that hasn't been gentrified yet in that Mar Vista Gardens area. And I'm able to sit with kids that most of them don't look like me, and they were born into tougher circumstances than I was born in.
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, that's all I can truly do. Like, I can't change what situation I was born into, but I can be mindful of it and be like, all right, let me look around. Who needs some help around me?
I fuck with that.
And I know you guys do, because I see the work that you put in. I see the work that you put in. Like, even just being a solid dad, like that's hard work. And you showing up at schools, like you could be a lot of different places.
Yeah.
And you're there being mindful of Nipsey's message and the fact that he was showing up at schools and helping out playground basketball courts, fixing them up and showing up and giving away shoes and bringing positivity back to the Crenshaw district. Like, that's how we honor him. That's how we honor our families. That's how we're mindful of like the situations that we're blessed into.
I fuck with that.
Speaking of fatherhood, is it? I was reading something that said your relationship with your dad is the reason why you don't drink.
Absolutely. So like, my dad's an alcoholic. His dad and mom were both alcoholics. And again, like, he was born into a situation that was not ideal. Like, he would he's like 10, 12 years old. His mom and dad would bring him to the bar with them.
Wow.
And he's playing shuffleboard by himself for hours while they get wasted. So, obviously once he got married and had myself and my older brother, like, there's certain stresses put on his life that he didn't know how to deal with. So he turned to the bottle too. And he's in a much better space now. He lives in Thailand, so he doesn't have the same amount of stress on his life, but he still drinks. And it's just something that, thankfully, I had an older brother who, tough time when you're in, like, those real challenging years are like, your high school years, especially early on. Like, which path are you going to go down to? How are you going to...
Fork in the road.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And fortunately, my older brother was like, I'm not drinking at all. I'm not doing any drugs. And, I looked up to him with such a, to such a degree that I would taste stuff in high school. I've never had a beer. I've never been buzzed. I've never been drunk. And I haven't had a sip since my senior trip of high school.
Wow.
So it's been, I'm 36 now. So we're talking, 19 years without a sip of alcohol. And I don't even think about it anymore. But yeah, absolutely. To your point, to your question, it was certainly seeing the effect that it had on my dad, his relationship with my mom, and how, it cost him that marriage. It cost him for many years a relationship with my older brother and I, because we weren't going to be around it, and it wasn't positive, and didn't feel good to be around him when he was drinking. It just wasn't good.
Did you guys hash that relationship out? Because I saw you flew to Thailand.
Yeah,
link
absolutely.
up with them.
So Chuck does his research. I want to let you guys know that Chuck read an old WordPress essay that I wrote. But essentially, I was able to go out to Bangkok, Thailand, and just have a sit down with him. And I'll remember the day forever. It was like we were walking. I stayed out there for maybe 2 weeks. And a few days in, we went for lunch, and out in Thailand, they have just like monsoon rains out of nowhere. It'll just start pouring. And we had just sat down for lunch, and it started pouring. And it poured for like a good almost 2 hours. And so we were just sitting there talking, and it got deep. And I was able to, let him know that there were certain things when I was a kid that I didn't feel like he lived up to my hopes for not only him, but how I'll be as a father. And he was able to be, really forthright about some of the challenges of being with my mom, because when you're a kid, it's like I saw my mom as like the angel and him as the devil, and not the devil to that extent, but like bad and good. Right. And after, at that point in my life, I had enough relationship experience to where I could understand where he was coming from more, and understand also how his upbringing had affected him, and how he really wasn't equipped with the tools to handle being a dad, let alone a husband. And so those things were challenging for him, and he coped the way that he had seen his parents cope. And obviously it wasn't in a positive way, but yeah, I was able to understand more of where he was coming from and the challenges that he was faced with, and why he felt like alcohol was needed in his life so heavily at that time.
I think that's so important too, man. The only reason why I brought that up is because you mentioned earlier about the silver lining between Nipsey, and one of the things that was kind of profound for me, like, the first few days, I didn't see anything. I'm just like, and even I got to shout you out, man. You hit me literally the first night, was like, yo, do you need anything? I come bring some food to the station. So I do appreciate that. I know that's off the record, but just those things alone show the testament in your character as well. But it allowed me to look up and say, damn, something like that's so tragic allows these conversations to be had, right? Allows the multiple hoods in LA to unite in solidarity that hasn't happened since 1992, right? Like, so it's crazy, as tragic that is. It's like you look at like, okay, well, damn, it took that for this to happen. It's like I planned on, I said on the last podcast, to start implementing like more of that in my life. And I think that it helped you out back then to have that conversation with your pops and really get that out and just, because a lot of people hold on to it. They never want to reach out. They never want to do that and just assume the worst or whatever the relationship was. But the fact that you got a chance to talk to him and hear his side of the story, granted, you guys probably aren't the best of friends now, but at least you have an understanding. So I think that's commendable. I think that needs to be talked about. I think that needs to be encouraged. I think that's something that people need to do on a regular basis because you'll feel way better about yourselves after that. You know what I'm saying? So I say all that to say I commend you for that. I think that's amazing. Yeah. It speaks high volumes of who you are and your character as a person, man. I just think that a lot of things are going to come great in your way towards the future. And I think that if you haven't already gotten it by this episode, this man is a great motivator. And I think you can look at your life and see the things that are happening based off of your character. You know what I'm saying?
With that, yeah. So, just last
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
What you call it? Well, I fuck with you, like heavy, like you know what I'm saying. You family to me, in my opinion, just because not only because you embrace the culture, but you actually are the culture. You live the culture. You know what I'm saying. You live by Nipsey's lyrics. You know what I'm saying. You do go to these areas and stuff like that. I don't know what your level of. I do know professionally, backlash has been brutal. You know what I'm saying. You lost your job, your livelihood. What about? Do you get any other backlash? Like, what do you say to people who say you exploit hip hop?
You know what I get?
Do people say that to you?
Very little, bro. Okay. And I was actually very mindful of that when I first started doing the videos. I would do like a rap video on a Monday, and then on Friday I'd do Elton John, and the next Friday I'm doing Michael Bolton,
right?
Because I needed to see what the temperature was, and I wanted people to see that it wasn't coming from a place of exploitation, and that it was me showing love, A, and B, making fun of myself and not making fun of anybody around me. Because, like, if it's county jail fades and I've got my clippers out, I know damn well what a county jail fade is. But I've got the clippers out to make fun of myself, as if I don't know what the hell is talking about. You know what I mean? Right. So, like, that's, and most people, 99.9%, pick up on that. You're always going to have an outlier here and there that's like, you're a cornball. And that's fine. Like, again, what I do is subjective. Anytime we're doing this stuff, it's subjective. You don't have to love it. But if you can't look around at the timeline in its whole and the other stories and me as a person, what I'm doing, and realize that that's not the case, then you're just not a smart enough person to be on my page, and then I'll just have to probably block you.
There you go.
So what's next for Kevin Cuenca, man?
Just continuing to put out my own content. I'm actually really excited. Just recently, I was over at Classic Industries down in Huntington Beach, and they're helping me refurbish my my old Firebird. And so to get that car looking really cool and to be able to create some content with that, and even in the old the daily driver, to jump around and get a guy like D-Lay, comedian, and get him in the passenger seat, pick up different people, and have not only an opportunity to rock out to some songs together, but also do a real interview and like, let's head someplace meaningful in your life. So it's all stuff that will be put out on YouTube, on Instagram TV, on Facebook. And over time, it'll be this kind of thing that I'll take to get sponsored by a company or go to a place like Netflix or Quibi, or these different places where we're going to be able to have content live and be able to make a living from that content. So that's what I'm really excited about is, when I was in college, these opportunities weren't available. And had I gotten fired in 2005, I'd be shitting bricks right now.
Exactly.
But because we're living in this different day and age where you actually can go out and make your own content, that's where all this stuff is going to live. And it's all going to be Kevin Cuenca TV. KEVINCUENCA
your
TV. I'd plug my shit before you could say don't plug your shit. And that's on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff. So that's the way to check out the content that I'll be making.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Real shit.
One final question I do want to ask.
Yeah.
We just want to get specific with it. The year can't end without Kevin Cuenca doing what?
Two things. Doing a Hustle and Motivate job fair with DJ Head and Chuck Dizzle
West Coast.
in Crenshaw.
Say no more.
Where we all have our booth set up and kids can come and ask us questions about how to do this stuff. And then in addition to that, continuing to create my own content and to find a sponsor for 2 different digital shows that I'll be doing, and be able to put that out directly to the people that have been rocking with me and shooting in the gym. Yeah. So that's what's so exciting, is just the fact that like we can literally create content and put it out. And Head and I might have something in the works as well.
Yeah,
a little something. You know, I
Well,
don't want to peel back the curtain too early.
You know
West
what I'm saying?
Coast.
Well, no, man. We do appreciate
something.
you coming on through, man. You are definitely beforehand, but we'll just make it official now. You are a homegrown homie, man.
I
So
appreciate that.
appreciate you coming on through. We look forward to seeing the future and everything else, Kevin Cuenca. So this is what it is. Chuck Dizzle, DJ Head, Homegrown Radio, and we out.